guys, this is going to be the first installment in a series I'm doing, and that is going to be focusing or featuring tips and tricks and kind of tool highlights from the perspective of 3D 2A and 3D printing for, silencers, grenades, guns, whatever, the stuff that we're into, right? So if you followed me for very long, or really at all, you probably realize that I've got tons of mortars and grenades and landmines and suppressors and cool shit like that. So I'm going to get into some quick tips about specifically how to use certain tools, or how at least I use certain tools to help me do that more efficiently, or just improve my process in general. And my goal here is I want as many people as possible out there to be able to take their idea, take a free program like Fusion, which is available for free for hobbyists if you weren't aware, and make them a real thing that they can distribute and we can all 3D print and experiment with, and just kind of keep that signal strong, right? So this is going to specifically focus on the Revolve tool, and why the Revolve tool kind of really can change the way that you sort of approach modeling anything. So what gave me the idea to make this specific tool highlight was, recently I was talking to a friend of mine, and I made him a quick video to give him a couple tips and tricks to maybe help improve his suppressor design, and he seemed to think that it helped a lot. And so I'll just lay it out like this. Basically what he was describing his process to me, and what he described is what we all do at first, right? When we want to make our own suppressor on Fusion, is he started with, a cylinder, right? A solid. We'll say it's this big, maybe a little more. And then he was like, okay, well, I want this to be a conical baffle, so I'm going to add a chamfer, right? That makes sense. That tracks. And then I guess I'll make a bore, because bullet has to pass through it, and then I guess I can make another chamfer here to kind of match that first one, and then yeah, okay, I guess that kind of works. And that's sort of a baffle-like shape and all. But this is totally valid, right? This is absolutely a way you can make things. This would work as a baffle. It might be a bit thicker than we'd like, but whatever, it would absolutely work, right? But what I propose, and maybe a new way to look at doing it, is instead of creating a baffle as a solid object that you then kind of modify to, that you chamfer and extrude and all this to create a baffle, I like to look at it like I'm making my tube, let's say, just whatever arbitrary size we want to work with. Let's say we make it this long. And then what I like to do is actually use my section analysis tool. And if you're not familiar with the section analysis tool, it's critical. It's an amazing tool, and you can really use it, especially in conjunction with the Revolve tool, to do some pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to use my section analysis tool to basically create a cut plane along the part there, a cross section kind of deal. And then I'm going to start a sketch on the same axis that I set my section analysis cut plane to. And in doing so, what I can do is then create basically a cross section of the baffle that I want to make, or more accurately, 1/2 of the cross section of a baffle that I want to make. So this would look something like this. Let's say I know I want to make a 60-degree cone. Okay, so I could draw a line, make it 60 degrees. Come and bring it over to the y-axis line here, and then to give it a thickness of whatever I want it to be. Let's say I know I want to make it 3 millimeters thick. No problem. I'll draw my line. Okay, I'm drawing, and I'll just make sure to connect it with the starting point of the first line there. And now I've got a filled in, complete, unbroken feature, right? So if I go and finish my sketch, I could use my Revolve tool, which is of course what this video is about. And the great thing about the Revolve tool is I can select that feature, or that profile, and select the cylinder as my axis, and I can create my baffle that way. I haven't set the new body, that's fine. And this really, of course, this is just a very basic conical baffle, right? And maybe I'd want to drag this down a little bit or something, and then I could repeat that with the rectangular pattern, or even just copy and pasting if I wanted to, whatever. But where this opens up a lot more possibility than just making a cylinder and then chamfering it is that you can very easily create some pretty creative and innovative geometry for your baffles. So, for instance, if I wanted to make a kind of curved baffle, right? Kind of like a bullet style baffle, as I believe people call it, I could do that. I could absolutely just copy paste that, make a second line here. Well, actually it'd be better to do an offset. Right, just like that. Revolve it around the tube. Make sure, because I drew it to where it's overlapping the existing tube, it'll default to cut, but that's not a problem. Let's switch to new body. And then I could cut and extrude my bore, whatever it was. So I could have a more advanced baffle geometry that way, or even cooler than that, maybe, or even more advanced or tinkerable would be to draw something like, I'm sure we've all seen baffles and suppressors that have these steps cut into it, or like these refractive or reflective features that kind of enhance turbulence, right? So it promotes and encourages turbulence, more so than just a flat regular baffle. So you can get really creative with the way that you do that. And it's really just as simple as drawing one half of the profile, right? Because I only have to draw one side of it in order to revolve it. And this is, of course, a pretty exaggerated example. I don't know that this would be a good suppressor, but hell, it might. So I can take this kind of random, wacky profile here and extrude it. And now I've got some crazy shit going on for my baffling, right? So it's pretty obvious how that can be used to make some pretty advanced baffles and stuff. And you could also forego the tube in general and just draw around an axis to kind of draw the tube at the same time. So you don't have to have straight walls. And I think that's something that a lot of people maybe don't even consider at first. So you could start a drawing. Let's say I want, and you could have the walls of your suppressor even, and implement this kind of crazy wacky geometry, And this is, of course, like I said, exaggerated as fuck and not something I'm proposing to be a good suppressor necessarily. It might be, I have no idea. But it is something that you can do in a way that you can get creative with the Revolve tool. So, of course, I don't have a tube, so I just revolve around the y-axis itself. Oops. So I'm glad that happened. That's actually an error because I accidentally crossed the axis line there. Okay, that fixed it. All right, grab these. So, obviously, like I said, I'm not saying that this is a good suppressor, but I am saying that it's a lot easier to get this kind of geometry using the Revolve tool than it is to try to chamfer and cut and extrude and do this, that, and the other. Another way that I like to use the Revolve tool is to, like when I'm drawing or making grenades or mortars or things like that. And the way that I like to do that is let's say I draw a circle. Let's say, of course I gotta turn my analysis off. Okay. So we'll say I'm starting a grenade body here. Let's just say, for example. Okay. So I can, I start with a bulk kind of cylinder here, just a solid piece, and then let's say I want to go ahead and cut or create the basic shape of my grenade in it. I'm just gonna take a guess at something here. I can create a profile with the outer edges of it, past the extent of the body that I've drawn or that I've created here, and then revolve with my cut feature or cut function operation selected, and that could be a rough shape for a grenade. And to take it even further, if you have a complex shape, like let's say I was doing something really crazy and really, out there, right? So I've got a big piece cut out of this, and I've got this kind of abnormal or atypical shape to my part here. If I start a sketch on that same cut plane that I'm working on because of my analysis, and I use the project/include menu here and select the intersect function, and make sure I switch over to bodies and then select the body, I can create basically a sketch of where the body intersected the plane that I'm working in. So the reason that that's so useful is because I can then use offset to create a wall thickness. So let's say I want a 2 mil wall thickness. Cool. If I make a line down my x-axis here, my z-axis here, I can then just select that profile, revolve it around that z-axis, and I've just created an inner profile that matches the outer profile, right? So it's a good way to hollow out complex shapes or something like that. So hopefully you get something out of that. The Revolve tool is great, especially for suppressors, but also for grenades, mortars, guns, whatever. I use it a lot. Hopefully you will too, and hopefully maybe it can kind of help you start thinking about how to reach the geometry that you want to achieve in a different way. If you've ever turned a lathe, like worked on a manual lathe, which I've done a lot of, then this will probably come naturally to you, or to think of a turned profile, or kind of what the profile of a turning is, right? So, yep, hope that helps. I'm going to be doing some other tools and some other kind of tips like this. So yeah, if you like this and want to know more, keep your eye out. I'll be doing some more soon. And thanks for watching.